Welcome back. My name is Jay Lepore. This is CompuMatter and the Tech Translated podcast. The goal for us here is to take the common problems that everybody deals with their computers and translate it into something that is more digestible for the average person who might not be so geeky and left brain. This is an evolving process. We're using technology that we are not masters, although tech translated, you'd think we'd be masters of all technology, but really
there's too much out there.
There
too much technology out there.
Really, and they're gray areas, and this is fringe areas, and broadcasting and podcasting and all that. Our average customer doesn't come in the door looking for help on that, so we need to learn that to get this out there. Anyway, my name is Jay. I'm the owner of the company, and I've been in the business since the 1990s, days of DOS, when the websites first came out, and everything in between. So that's why I own a computer store, and I'll move this on down to
Auren?
Oh, me next. All right, I'm Auren Frost. I don't have much of an intro prepared, but I'm excited to talk about...
Look at the camera.
Oh, yeah.
You're looking down.
I'm excited to talk about all sorts of the tech things and maybe help people understand better how to navigate all the confusion, because there's always changes in software, and it's okay to be confused sometimes. We're here to help.
All right. I'm going to leave you in a dry spot.
And I'm Douglas. Switching cameras.
Center, hold on, this is me too. There you go.
I'm Douglas from CompuMatter, a manager down here, and yeah, hopefully we can help solve some of the frustration that you have with computers. There's certainly a lot of it out there.
All right. So we've got this camera switching technology that has been a lot. So if you see me going like this every now and then, we're trying it out, see how it works. We didn't have it last week, and we'll get better at that over time.
All right, let's start it off with something off of the list. Slow performance. Let's start off with number one.
That sounds great. Now, but by the way, anybody has any questions, ask. We'll be able to see those questions. Just chat whatever you've got to say. We'll see it, and we'll try to respond to those during the course of the podcast.
Yeah, the chat is live. If it's working, we'll be able to see it.
Yeah. All right. Lay it on us, bud.
All right, slow performance. So for anybody who's dealing with slow computer, or a computer that used to be fast and is just starting to slow down, things you can do to prevent that slowing process, or things to do to speed it up immediately. You got any ideas on something you'd point somebody to?
I wasn't expecting that. I thought you were going to take that off. All of a sudden, I was just enjoying
We're bubbling off of it. Okay, the first thing you can do is you can go to your control panel. If you don't know what the control panel is, you can get there by typing in the Start menu on Windows. And this will be for the Windows side. They have a control panel that allows you to go to Programs and Features, and you can uninstall some programs that you no longer use. That would be the first most efficient way to speed up your machine. On the Mac side, you just go into Applications. In your Finder window in the bottom left-hand corner, you can get to your applications, and you can right-click on any of your applications and move them to trash if you're not using them, and that'll also get rid of extra stuff that's going on in the background.
All right. How about you, Lauren? You got anything?
Well, another big one is if you've been having problems with your computer for a while and you've had it for a decent amount of years, a good likelihood is that your hard drive might be a conventional hard drive.
You took what I was going to talk about.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
Too slow. I gave you the choice.
I needed some time to think about it.
Oh, my bad. Yeah, but conventional hard drives, they have a spinning platter disk and an arm that goes back and forth to read and write the data, and over years of use, that can really slow down. So if you put a chip-based hard drive in there, a solid-state drive, whether that be an NVMe or one of the typical solid states, it will improve your computer's performance by a lot.
It's about 3 times the speed of a conventional drive.
Yep.
Right. We should have one of those for demonstration purposes.
Yeah.
Okay, so other things that you can do to speed up your computer, programs that start when your computer starts up that you don't even know are happening. So you can go into an area, there's a couple of different areas on your computer. Now I'm talking about Windows computers. I apologize to Apple computers because they may have, they're going to have some of their own startup issues.
They're called login items.
And Douglas would be more the guy, Douglas and perhaps Auren would be more the people on that than me. But in Windows, the Task Manager, which you can do a Control-Alt-Delete, and one of the options you'll get is going to Task Manager, In there, you're going to see a tab that says Startup Programs. And if you go down that list of startup programs, you're liable to see a lot of programs that start up that you don't use that are taking a lot of resources. In fact, it will tell you what percentage of processing power each one of those programs typically take. In other words, actually not percentage, it says high, moderate, or low. So you can see if it's taxing your system pretty heavily during that startup process. Disable them. If you don't use OneDrive, you don't need to be starting every time your computer starts. And that same goes for any other program that might be starting up.
And if you don't want to know how to solve the problem, we'll be here for you. You can just bring it in, and we can do what's referred to as a system cleanup, and we go through the multiple lists of startup programs, as well as when we get to the list of programs, we give you a call, ask you what you're using and what you're not using, and eliminate some of the extra fat in the system.
But I'm going to touch base on that hard drive again. There's a program for Windows users called HDD
Scan, yeah.
Scan, right?
HDD
HDD Scan. It's a free program. You'll have to search for it and find it, and hopefully you won't download a virus while you're looking for this based on our recommendation. But there are some reputable sites out there to get it from. I'm trying to think of one of them. What is it? Geeks? Major Geeks.
And then we have a YouTube video on HDD Scan as well. If you
we do. Okay, so on our CompuMatter channel, on YouTube's CompuMatter channel, you'll find a video on HDD Scan that talks a little bit about that. But you can run that, and it will tell you the condition of your hard drive in real time. And a failing hard drive make the biggest difference in the performance of your computer. So if you're having a problem, it'll be invisible to you. You'll try to fix a million things in software, and it will have no effect on anything because the underlying problem turns out to be something to do with your hard drive. So worth investing.
Yeah, and that actually that goes over to if you're using a program and only in that one program is it running super slow, you might need to look at the system requirements of that program, and you might just need to upgrade your RAM or upgrade some other component that's not quite meeting the recommendations.
Right.
So sometimes everything could be fine and your computer's just not up to snuff enough to deal with it.
All right.
Yeah, the computer itself can be
just underpowered for whatever program you're trying to utilize.
Right. And how would you know that?
You look up the system requirements for the program you're trying to use.
For the specific program.
Yeah, if I'm using Photoshop, I type in system requirements, and then if it tells me I need, 16 gigs of RAM, I can right-click on, well, for Windows, you can right-click on the Start menu and go to System. It'll tell you how much RAM you are, and then on the Mac side, you can click on the Apple in the top left-hand corner and go to About This System, and it'll tell you how much RAM you have.
On that note, on the, I'm the wrong person. On that note, yeah, the camera's switching to the wrong person. Yeah, I'll go ahead and tell the story while we look at her. All right, that's it. The Task Manager, just like before, Control-Alt-Delete Task Manager, one of the other tabs, it shows you, I think it's called Performance. And Performance will show you how much memory is being taken right now in real time. So if you've got 16 gigs of RAM or 8 gigs of RAM or whatever the number is, and it's using 100%, well then you've got a problem that needs to be dealt with somehow, some way. If it turns out you're only using 50%, you're great.
And on the Apple side, it's called Activity Monitor, and it gives you all those same sort of things that Task Manager does.
Right. I think there's some confusion about how much RAM does a person need and all that kind of stuff. With Windows 11, 8 gigs is plenty. If it turns out you're using programs on top of that,
Photoshop, something that has higher requirements.
But in general, 8 gigs are what most of them come with, and it'll be fine. Just depends on what.
And minimum is 4, but we don't approve of anybody having 4. It's not really enough, even if it does qualify as minimum.
Yeah. Okay, we have our first chat. Tech World Software School. Wow. We don't get that very often. Hello to Tech World Software School. We'll have to look in and see what that is.
Turquoise waving.
Person turquoise.
How's it going?
I don't know. Person turquoise might be a caricature or what they call those avatar of some kind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it could be somebody trolling for business. It could be that too. And great live from Florida. Florida, I love Florida.
Nice.
I've lived in Florida for 25 years, so know it well.
That's great.
And I do want to make, and they say they need at least 16 gigs of, yeah.
Which is standard. Once you get to the industry, then 1632, that's probably where you're more likely to be.
I'm actually running with 128 gigabytes of memory on the computer that we're running this from, because I'm into so many different things in multimedia development and rendering videos. That's where you really start to bump it up a notch.
Because you can have that going on in the background and then need the processing power for everything else on the other side.
Yeah, but I have servers that run with only 8 or 16 and do a fine job. It just depends on the need.
Yeah, I go with 32 because I typically have Discord open in the background, and I might have some recording software running while playing a game, and so I tend to use all the processing power of that.
Now, I would like to touch on, if you at home that are watching this video don't want to go through the brain damage of learning how to use HDD scan or looking at your task manager or digesting these numbers, we can remotely support you. We have the technology. You just give us a call on numbers, and right over my head there, 360-299-2428, or visit our website and drop us an email at CompuMatter.com, and one of us will reach out to you, take control of your computer remotely, and we will be able to tell you where the hiccups are.
What's going on,
hiccups.
as long as you don't have an internet connection issue, because that's how we're going to be connecting. And then on the top of that, it is appointment basis, so it won't be an immediate. If it is an emergency, we have emergency fees to cover those sort of situations, but most of the time it's going to be an appointment based. We'll set up a time and make it work for both of us.
But at least you're not going, you don't have to go to India. You don't have to, you don't have to struggle on your own. You don't have to Google for a solution. Trustworthy company, been around 20 years. Google reviews are out there. Give us a call. Won't cost much money. We'll get you over the hump, and we're there when you need us. Okay, what else you got? Auren, you haven't been talking very much. We better get on with it.
Well, that's true.
Do we want to go on the same subject, or we want to... Maybe we'll pick out of a hat next time. Maybe I'll
That
cut
would be
these up.
good. Yeah, that would be a lot
I
of
like
fun.
that. Yeah,
and then you
cut
have to
these into little strips.
Then you got to shoot from the hip, whatever it is, immediate.
Right.
All right. So, well, let's pick one at random.
Yeah, I mean, we could talk about the internet connectivity issues. That can be a very big set of things to discuss.
It's a common one.
Because you could get, if we're talking about a Windows particular issue, I have been seeing driver issues pretty frequently recently, where Windows will try to update and presumably put in an incorrect driver in the system. Suddenly your internet stops working, and, well, you can't really search anything on how to fix it. So you're kind of stuck at that point unless you know what to try.
In which we have a video on YouTube on our channel about fixing Wi-Fi driver issues. So there is at least one thing that you can attempt on your own, as long as you have a phone that has an internet connection issue. I guess I have to clarify. You can't look anything up if you have an internet issue.
Auren, could you explain to them what is a driver? If I were golfing, I would know right away which club we're talking about, but otherwise they might
not a wedge.
Good point. Let me translate that. So a driver is a little piece of software that is imperative in letting your operating system, whether it be Windows or your Mac computer, communicate with the hardware of your computer. So each component, like your USBs or your microphone or your camera, all of those have to have a driver in order for them to function properly. And if that driver, that little piece, suddenly stops working for whatever reason, that hardware component won't work properly anymore for you.
So like the computer,
it's mainly the communication.
Looks at that driver, that piece of software that is the driver, and by virtue of reading that, it understands how to play with that component, how to make it work.
Correct.
And if that driver is bad,
you're just on her.
It can't make it. No, what's that? Hold on a second.
Yeah.
What?
You're still just on her.
Oh, I wanted to be on her.
Oh, okay.
Oh.
Yeah, this is her topic. I don't want to hijack her topic and make it my topic.
But you're target. All right.
Okay, so that was just furthering the explanation.
Yeah, and I'd say on the Apple side, they typically don't have as many driver problems because of the fact that it is the same company that makes the hardware and the software, so they tend to have less of that type of problem. Windows, however, they have billions of different machines, tons of different manufacturers all over the world, and Windows has to scan all these machines and determine what the best driver is. And if it senses an update is required on your machine, they could be wrong. And they could apply that update anyway, thinking they're doing the right thing, and 25% or 10% even of those machines, it's the incorrect driver, and they're a big company, and they also suffer from human error, and so sometimes they scan, they get the wrong one, and they put in a driver that causes the issue to get worse.
Oh yeah, the wrong driver that can block your whole system.
Yeah, well, for the wireless is one of the more common ones, and it just stops your wireless from functioning totally.
Yeah, I've had situations, and I know that the two of you have too, where the wrong driver, especially a video driver, can cause your entire computer to go blue screen. And if you don't have any way of restoring your way out of that, it can end up at the computer store, and that's not a blue screen is not something that can be resolved via a remote control or something like that. You end up needing to get real help to get you back to where you started.
Yeah.
And with on the Apple side, you can make a time machine backup is something they have built in, that if you have some sort of error that causes your machine not to boot, you can fresh install and restore back to that. And then on the Windows side, they have a system restore point that you can create. And you can create that at any time. I recommend you create it right now. You go into the start menu, type in system restore. You can create a system restore point, and that makes it if something fails tomorrow, you have one extra step that you can do that you couldn't do if you don't set it up. And that allows you to go back to a restore point before the issue happened. And that can save you from Windows themselves installing the incorrect driver and causing boot issues.
Right. Yeah.
Now, if anybody out there has any questions, we can see the questions coming up. So if you're sitting at home or your workplace and you've got something you're struggling with, even if it's off topic, throw it out there, and we may or may not be able to help you.
Yeah, or even something that you're curious about. It doesn't even have to be a problem, although with computers, usually people have problems they want to bring to the surface.
All right. By the way, if anybody, we can't really hear ourselves. We've done some testing with audio, so if you want to weigh in and see, and just to say that the audio is weak or better on one or the other, we can respond to that.
Oh.
Got a question?
Okay, what software do you recommend for digital audio workstation? I'm not sure what digital audio workstation is. Is that a specific computer?
Is that a component?
Is that a software program?
Or is it just a general workstation for working with digital audio? That might be what it is.
Yeah, I think if we understand them right, anytime you're dealing with the editing of multimedia, and audio would be less so than video. As long as you're, they're looking for a software program, I see, to record audio music. There's a lot of different things out there, and I'm not an expert on the subject, but I will tell you that there is one called Cakewalk, which has been around for a long, long time. That used to be a very expensive program that has been open sourced, and that might be worth taking a look at.
And I personally use Magix, but I'm doing stuff with music mainly.
Yeah, so Cakewalk is music also.
Okay, all right.
Cool.
All audio files and music. And what do you use, Magic? Is that Windows-based?
Magix with an X at the end of it, and that is a Windows software. I don't know if they make an Apple version of it.
Okay. And in programs like Audacity, Audacity.
That's a free one as well, isn't it?
That's a free one. That's not. It doesn't have the. It actually does have multiple tracks, and there's a lot you can do with it. But it's a much more, friendly version of that type of thing that'll apply to a lot of users that want to edit audio. But you're probably not a studio broadcasting company quality product. But if you Google it, you'll certainly come up with a lot of others. You sometimes just have to put these things through the trials and tests and determine what is too much brain damage, what looks user-friendly, what does what I needed to do and doesn't do a million more things that I don't need to do.
I use Magix. I don't fully know if I'd recommend it unless you're super serious about tackling a monster, because it is a big program with a lot of features. So there's a lot to go over in it.
Okay. All right, what else we got?
Well, I also wanted to touch on back to the internet connectivity issues. VPN can actually cause a lot of issues. At repairs here, we see a lot of times people come in with their machine and they can't access a website, or things just suddenly stop working, like Outlook. We've actually found a lot of times that people, first of all, don't know that they have a VPN. They maybe got it when they installed their antivirus service, or they were given some sort of security software that was really the main feature, but they didn't really know what they were getting into.
Yeah, it says some people are unfamiliar on what a VPN actually does, and they just know that it ups the amount of security. So they end up getting the VPN and not realizing it plays a role in your internet connectivity issue very heavily.
Yes.
And can sometimes just cause slowness and intermittent cutting out, because essentially it's sending your connection through a bunch of other machines in order to make it not show up locally as where you are.
I think that's the typical of security in general. All security solutions are some kind of barricade between you and the bad actor, and as they increase that blockade against bad things happening, it affects your world and your performance. And VPN is just a wonderful stuff and an absolutely necessary ingredient for a lot of businesses to do businesses, to control their computers at the office when they're away, because everything is going through an encrypted tunnel and nobody can see whatever the bits and bytes are in between. But if you're running VPN and you're not at your business and you're just doing personal stuff, there's no reason to have it on unless you want your individual searches and things to be blocked from public view, because there's always a little bit of a handicap.
If you're hiding something.
Yeah, well, there's that too.
Yeah.
Or if you're going to a coffee shop with your laptop, probably recommend.
Yeah, a coffee shop with an open wireless that doesn't have a password on it. I'd probably recommend a VPN.
I don't
for that
fool
sort
with
of
it. I
thing.
mean, I don't have anything to hide. I'm out on in the coffee shop. I don't use VPN. I just get in there, do what I need to do. I mean,
it depends. If
There's
you're
a degree of fear that I just don't want to live with.
If you're at an actual well-established business, they probably have security over the network. But anywhere you go that has an open Wi-Fi with no password that you connect to, say in a coffee shop in the middle of nowhere, the network actually does have an ability to see what you're doing on your computer.
Yeah, but it would require WireGuard, some kind of a snooping program, and it would require a person who knows how to use that program. So you'd have to have a geek sitting in that coffee shop with advanced snooping software, looking at the bits and bytes going through the air and trying to disseminate, and they can't look at everybody at the same time, so they'd be trying to identify because they're just IP addresses on the snooping software. So it's not that simple where they just read it they're reading it.
It's not something to be hyper paranoid about, but they can see what you're doing, and it can happen.
Yeah. No, if I worked for the government, it would have to be, right? I can't take a chance on anybody being able to snoop it, right? Or a hospital or your medical information or that kind of thing. So there are places. It just depends on your need. Okay, what else we got?
All right, moving on. Well, we touched on the driver issues and the Wi-Fi connectivity and the remote access. Let's go with overheating. Overheating is a fairly common problem that a lot of people run into. Not a lot of people dust their machines. Very simple thing that you can do. Get a little compressed air can and blow out some of your fan vents
a feather duster won't work.
A feather duster won't work. It might make your keyboard look a little bit better. Try not to eat over your computer keyboard. If you have a laptop, that'll fill up the little gaps and make things easier to overheat and could get you bugs.
Yep.
Heat is the enemy of all machinery, of all life forms. If you heat it to a certain temperature, we're all going to die. I don't care if it's a tiny organism or us or machines. So it's the same thing with computers. So you really If you're not worried about it, if you don't think it's getting hot, everything feels normal, don't,
You can usually tell from the temperature
yeah.
of the machine itself.
But one of the side effects of overheating is your computer will just completely shut off. I mean, boom, gone. Computers are programmed to do that. The motherboard senses the level it gets over. What is it, 50 centigrade?
It's different for different processors. There's a range.
It'll shut off. But even if that's not happening, you can be causing subtle damage over a long period of time with a machine that runs too hot. And how would you know if it was running too hot? I'm going to pull a Douglas, and we'll make that yours. Where are you? Right? Oh, shit.
There's all of us.
There we go. Douglas. All right. Tell us how you know your computer's overheating.
Well, you can install temperature software, or we talked about the task manager earlier. You can see how hard your machine's working on processing through the task manager. You can put your hand on it. If it's a laptop, you can usually tell if it's getting too hot in comparison to how it's normally supposed to feel. I'd say for laptops, a special one is people like to put it on their lap. They like to put it on, their blanket when they're in their bed or on their couch with a blanket. Really try to not cover up your fan vents. Underneath the computer is typically where the laptop will be breathing from. Put a book underneath it, something that allows air circulation. I've seen a lot of laptops get killed that way just because it seems comfortable and okay until your machine starts shutting off. But blowing out your fan vents is a big one. If you're not into tearing apart your computer and actually replacing the CPU paste, you can take it into a local computer store like ours. We take them apart and replace this paste that is in between the heatsink and the CPU. And what that does is that allows the heat transfer to come out of the CPU, travel through the heatsink, and then the fans kick it out the fan vent.
Okay. And Auren, what do you think about what would be your best as a layperson?
Preventative measures?
How would you detect if your computer is overheating, since you can't tell by looking at it?
Well, if you can cook eggs on it, it's a pretty good sign. No, but there's a software actually that I've found somewhat recently that I love for checking on it. If you're hearing your fans start kicking up a lot more and it's just really loud, that's a pretty good sign. And at that point, if you're hearing it more commonly, I'd recommend if you're using a Windows computer, you can get this tool called HW Info, stands for Hardware Info. And it will actually give you a sensor that lets you see what the temperatures are of your CPU.
And there is a lot of temperatures, a lot of gauges in that program. It can be a little bit overwhelming, but the CPU one is typically what you'll want to look at.
That's a good resource. What was the name of that again?
HW Info, and I do also have a video of that on our YouTube channel. If you want to have a tutorial on how to use it, I would highly recommend it. It's a really wonderful piece of software.
And the CPU paste, essentially, to go back on, that is what's getting the heat out of your system. The CPU paste lasts a long time. I mean, I typically replace mine probably every year or two. Like, I don't really tend to replace it that often. But what happens is when it heats up and cools down repeatedly, it slowly dries up and it becomes hard as rock. And then eventually it's doing the exact opposite of its job. It's holding the heat into the CPU and insulating it from the heat sink. And that's where you tend to get into those situations where the machine will just shut off after not running that long. Or when you go to do something intensive and the machine's working harder, it'll shut off.
But download that piece of software and work through it. And again, if you don't want to, you call us. We'll log into your computer. We'll download the software. We'll show you what's going on. I want to answer a couple of questions from Deval. Can we please make a video on grub, how it works, and other? So grubs are these little worms, are about that big, find behind the tree bark.
Good for fishing.
But no, he's talking about grub as it applies to the boot process of a Linux machine, and it's like the very first thing that the operating system thinks about before it actually boots the computer. Unfortunately, a talk about grub would apply to such a small number of the people that we're targeting with these videos that I really can't go into detail about grub.
Well, we can do a Linux episode
So
one of these days. One of these days, maybe we'll do a just a Linux version. We'll come up with subjects just for the Linux crowd because I definitely appreciate it. I'm trying to get as many customers to go Linux as possible, although it's difficult for a lot of things. Anybody who just uses the computer for internet shopping and doing their finances, you need to be in Linux. It's
Yeah.
ultimately the safest place you could be.
We're all big fans of Linux.
Highly recommended.
And one of the other questions that comes up is why does it not let go of hard drive space? And by the way, on the Grub thing, I want to just make one quick mention. We have another channel on YouTube called CompuMatter. So we've got CompuMatter, which deals with the masses and the typical uses. There's another channel called CompuMatter, which deals with the things that commonly come up on Linux server environments. And we use Ubuntu. He's asking what Linux distribution do we use? We recommend Ubuntu right down the line. There's a million different, there's a lot of different wonderful Linux versions. The reason we stand behind Ubuntu is because it is the largest, it's the most embraced worldwide version of Linux. And we talked about drivers earlier. That means if you install Ubuntu desktop and you go home and you want to add your printer or your scanner or your camera or whatever thing that you have in your home that you want to interact with your computer, it is most likely to have the drive. Ubuntu has an extensive driver library support built into it, so it's most likely to not give you problems and for you to be happy with that choice. So
that being said, if you're familiar enough with Linux, you can manually install everything. But Ubuntu comes with a little bit more user-friendliness of all that extra support of everybody using it.
And it's what we use for our servers here at the store as well, for very much the same reason. Question, why does it not let go of hard drive space? So somebody has erased what they believe is all the things that are important on their hard drive, but they're still seeing the data there, and they can't figure out where the data is coming from.
There's an unknown of what operating system they're using there. That could even apply to a cell phone if they're just referring to storage space.
It applies to Linux or Windows, so let's address, you can address Windows and you can address Windows.
Well, I'd say in all of them they share one thing in common, is it's possible it's all still in the trash.
Yeah.
And a lot of programs have a trash or a recently erased spot that has that information still in it. And then as far as software corruption, if you've deleted a file and the computer doesn't know how to delete it, it might still remove the location of that file and it looks like it's gone and it's still there taking up the same amount of hard drive space.
So software, finding that recycle bin, finding that trash, make sure that it's not all there.
Making sure there's a purge on that side, and then there's scans that you can run on Windows like SFC Scan Now and check disk corruption repair scans that could find some of these files and remove it. But on that note, anything that you think is taking up too much space on the Windows side of things is you can install a program called Folder Size. And Folder Size will give you a literal pie chart of every file on your machine and how much data is taking up how much space and what percentage anywhere on the drive. And that's a way that you can catalog whether or not you've actually gotten rid of something, or if there's a temporary file that's taking up 43 gigs on your hard drive, and then you can delete that file from there. Just be careful on what you're deleting and knowing if it is connected to something else, because there's a lot of connective tissue in a machine, and if you find a file and think it's useless, and delete it. A lot of times I'll recommend copying it, putting it on a flash drive or an external drive, and then deleting it, so that if it causes a problem in a program that you use, you can put it back.
All right, Auren, you got any thoughts on a full hard drive? If he's deleted data and doesn't really see where
it's not even full. It just says it does not let go of the hard drive space. Like it's still taking up the space after you deleted it.
Well, but I don't know if you've deleted it. It's going to make a difference. Now it has to.
Software corruption or the recycle bin is.
So I would think the bigger issue is. I mean, I'll tell you what. Even if it's not the specific question, the more ubiquitous situation is, you're trying to figure out where the data is that you're trying to delete, right? All the talent. You're trying to figure out where the data is.
Yeah.
That's taking up all the space. It says 100%, and you can't find it. I guess maybe I'm a little bit off topic.
Oh, no, actually, that does make a good point. Software corruption is a lot higher of a chance to happen if you have a full hard drive. Yeah. So if your hard drive gets full and then you delete a bunch of stuff and it's not actually giving you the space, and the trash bin is empty, you could be suffering from software corruption, and all this could just be being misread information.
You got any thoughts on it?
Well, I'd say if you have just gone through and deleted a bunch of stuff and you still see it says the hard drive is full, if you haven't, try rebooting your system too, because sometimes it can hold on to cached things and just think that it's still there. I've seen a reboot resolve those sort of confused situations, and then it might not be as serious of an issue at that point.
I know on the Linux side, if it is a Linux user that is addressing this question, I use a program called NCDU. I don't know what that stands for, but I install that, go to a command line. These are all free programs that we're talking about here, by the way. They might have upgraded versions, but the free versions will do the things that you need to do, folder size and HDD scan, and in this case NCDU. You can tell it how many directories deep you want it to look, and it will show you what directories are taking the most space so that you can address those and delete it. If you're using ZFS on your Ubuntu system, that can create a whole different can of worms, and as valuable as ZFS is, without getting into all the details of ZFS, it can create snapshots, and those snapshots can be hidden on your drive and taking up a lot of space, and you end up having to delete those snapshots in order to free up space.
Yeah.
I think that's a good cover
question.
of that.
Yeah.
Unless you have specifics on that question, we kind of just went across various different ways that could come up as a problem.
A little bit of everything.
All right, so what do you think? You want to put a sign on the door and tell them we'll open in 10 minutes, or?
I can do it.
Oh, all right, go
You
ahead.
guys will have to
Go ahead and do
ramble
it.
for a minute.
Me and Douglas will sit here for a little bit and see what else we got.
All right, let's go into file recovery.
So what else we got?
Yeah, I said file recovery.
File recovery. Okay, what do you mean by file recovery? What does that mean?
I mean, if somebody has a problem with file recovery and they need to recover a file.
Okay, they've lost a single file?
They lost a single file. What could they do about it?
Okay. In my eyes, what I would do if we lost a single file, they can't help us. I cambered over to the empty chair, looking for help, but there was none. If you are looking for a single file, I would use a free program called Everything. So it just Google, oddly enough, the term everything.
You just Google everything. It'll be real easy. Just all you got to do is Google everything.
I'm going to be on the. Let me just switch over.
It's a searching software, so if you haven't actually deleted the file and it has just been mislocated, then it's a software that allows you to search your entire computer. Another, on the simpler side, on Windows, you can go into this PC and your File Explorer, and in the search bar, if you're in the main C drive, you search for a file name, it'll search the entire drive for that file.
Okay,
this is a little bit better user interface.
So I've taken you off. You were off camera. I don't know if you knew that or not.
Yeah, I don't care. I'm going with it.
So I've been taking them to the. We're playing with this camera technology where we can take you to the screen and share with you. So this is the program called Everything. It's at voidtools.com. It's free. You download it. You can scan. It'll scan your entire computer. That'll take a little bit of time, and once it gets done scanning, you'll be able to see. You can search for a particular file name or a piece of a file name. It will search every drive on your computer. I think it also searches network environment, but it's an irreplaceable asset for finding nooks and crannies and files and folders on your computer in the quickest possible way.
Yeah, I'd say that you have any other advice on data recovery or file recovery?
Data recovery.
Or file recovery?
File recovery. So you've lost a file somewhere on your computer and you don't know where.
And we just went over if you misplaced it rather than if you deleted it.
Yeah, have you gone over the search functionality of File Explorer?
Yeah, so File Explorer, if you are in the main C drive or the main drive and you search, it'll search every single folder in your entire hard drive.
Yeah. I mean, I have another thing to touch on just because somebody came in yesterday with this issue, and it's kind of on the same topic of if you use Word and you have the autosave functionality on. I have seen it where people are working on this incredibly important document, whether it be a book or memoir. Or
Yeah, I believe
any
it was a
sort of
memoir
thing.
on that one.
Yeah, and it completely wiped out everything on that document. He still had the document, and it was named the same thing, but it was just completely empty.
Almost like he had highlighted everything and hit a key, and it deleted everything and replaced it with that keystroke, and then he saved it afterwards.
Yeah. So he came in and he was really worried about it. And there's actually a really nice feature on Word that allows you to go back in time, and it's called revision history. So if you go up on the top on Windows, there's going to be the name of the file, and you can actually click on that button. And then on the bottom of that menu that comes up, you have version history that you can click on and go back through and click through the different times that that file had been saved and actually restore a previous state of the file.
Yeah, and that's also, if you're unfamiliar with that process, but you do recall that you do have a file you've done that with and you still have the file, we can help you out with that process as well. On file recovery, I'd say the biggest advice that I could give anybody is to back up your stuff before you're so stressed out about it that you have to be freaking out. There's nothing more important than a backup. If the data is actually important to you, it is already backed up. Remember that, because if you lose a file, you have to remember it's not that important because you never backed it up. It really isn't.
Yeah. Nothing more important than a backup.
Agree.
I've been in this business for 4 decades now, 4.5 decades. I've seen all the emergencies play out, all the panicked customers, businesses that have lost data. There's no gray area on this. We create business servers here at the store. We create them. We sell them to businesses that need file shares and shared calendars and all that stuff in their world. And it includes backups that are built in under the hood, so all the data is protected no matter what they do. Any file that's saved in that server, every half hour, it's going through and it's saving it. And there's also a cloud backup, so if the machine is actually stolen or the building burns down, you've got a backup off-site. But that just underscores the importance of backups for everybody.
Yeah, and I see a comment there, losing your work is the most frustrating thing. Anybody who's in the line of work with computers knows that it's a horrible part of the job. Is pretty much everybody learns that lesson at some point in their career.
Okay, I want you to think of a number.
7.
No. That's a good, there are 7 kids in my family, so that's a good number. But no, think of a number, and in your mind, what percentage of the average consumer do you think has a regular backup that they're verifying? Okay, and
regular backup,
yeah,
or just a backup? It's an important distinction.
A backup and verify is an important quantity. It's not just enough to have a backup. It's only a backup if you can verify with regularity that it's doing what it's supposed to do.
Yeah.
So, what percentage of people do you think are doing exactly that out of 100? I've got my number in my head.
Because of the newer cloud technology forcing a lot of users into a backup they didn't even know they have.
But they're not verifying. Not knowing means not verifying. I can tell you, even with OneDrive, I had a situation very recently that involved my own brother.
That was disconnected?
Catastrophic.
Ugh.
He thought OneDrive was covering him, and OneDrive was not. It didn't have the directory where all his important stuff was in as part of their experience.
And we're talking about everybody.
I'm talking about everybody.
Everybody.
What percentage of people, out of 100, how many do you think are doing what we know to be the most important thing you can do to ensure the data that's important to you is there when you need it?
I'm going to go with 20%. And 15% of that is going to be people who are required by work to do so. So I'm going to say 5% of the people protecting their own data, and then 15% of that is people who require it for their job to have constant backups and security on their data.
All right. Okay.
Because there's a professional aspect where I have to work in those numbers, but just the normal consumer having backups they regularly check. It's unfortunate.
We see a lot of people.
Not a lot.
We know who's doing what. What do you think?
I would say on the same topic, I would agree. There's, if you're working somewhere, you're probably going to have your entire environment backed up. But on the same topic, that same person could have a personal computer at home that they don't have the time, or they don't want
Right.
to back
Yeah,
it
we
up.
got to guess
I
at
would say
3%.
I would say 5%.
Yeah, I was
as
being
much
nice.
as I tell
Right.
my friends, they don't do a regular backup. They don't
Right.
verify.
Right.
And then I have a cloud solution in place because even I'm too busy most of the time to go through and do it on my own system regularly.
Right.
So cloud is a really good tool that just backs
So that
things up.
percentage, you're falling in line with him on the?
No, I'd say 5%.
5%, okay.
Yeah.
And that's an interesting, that 5% comes up in both cases. I know he's putting businesses in the class of their own, and I didn't address that, but 5% is a number that was in my mind and has been in my mind for now a couple of decades. So I've been in it 4 decades.
Yeah,
So the first 20 made it obvious, and it's never changed.
It's every year there will be at least a handful of catastrophic people losing their data, coming in, hoping desperately that we can recover the data. Sometimes we can, sometimes we can't. But it is a painful part of the job because it's usually family photos that are the most devastating, but there's a lot of cases where it's financial documents and wills and the type of stuff you can't even imagine losing.
I want to offer 2 solutions because, you know, it's one thing to offer up, here's a problem, right? How do
You
you
solve it,
as a
you back up
consumer?
your data.
Right, yeah, just to take the computer from wherever it was and move it backwards, right?
Yeah,
And then
back it up.
You back the
Back it up.
computer up, back that thing up, as they say, and I think no, but anyway, a couple of solutions. One for me is a program called Backblaze, and I'm not making any money suggesting this to you, but it's a program that we've used regularly here at the store and have recommended to customers over the years. For $6 a month, you go to their website, you download the software into your desktop, and it backs up everything you've got, no matter how many drives you have attached to your computer, C, D, E, or whatever. They all get backed up online, $6 a month. Now, if you ever have to download it, restore it, there's a surcharge for that, but it's peace of mind. If your computer gets stolen, whatever, you don't have to deal with plugging in hardware, dealing with a local backup and all that. You know, it's a small expense. Alternatively, you can get a hard drive and a USB cable and attach it to your computer and use a backup software. There's a couple of them out there. One that we've used over the years is called Cobian, C-O-B-I-A-N, works very well. Free, go find it. And another one called Duplicati, which is free, go find it. Both work well, both free, and we'll just get it backed up somewhere.
I will recommend for people who have 48 terabytes of information, some ridiculous size, Duplicati would probably be the direction I go because it has an ability to limit duplicates. It'll eliminate so many duplications of information that it'll actually crunch your data down to a smaller size. So for those really big cases.
Yeah.
And then for the standard, the basic backing up your data, a lot of people just want to back up their photos. I recommend learning how to copy and paste. It's a very simple procedure. You can buy an external hard drive or a USB drive. Just copy your photo albums, paste them onto something else, anything else. Put it in a security lockbox, put it in a closet, and make a second copy of it, give it to your mother, and then you'll have it in a secondary location in any sort of situation you're going to lose something.
Yeah, I know we hit on the big ones, but do you have anything to add to backups?
Well, I was just listening for the most part, but I'd say, you know, your advice on Backblaze, Duplicati is good. I made a video on Duplicati, actually.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Another thing to point you to if you want to set
That's
up a backup.
on the YouTube channel.
On our YouTube
Right.
channel, yeah. And it's a really nice tool. I like how the user interface looks. It's pretty friendly for somebody setting up a backup. So that would be my recommendation. If you've never touched on that before, just go ahead and take a look at that video and see if that helps you out.
Okay, I got a couple of chimes in.
Hello, Spa Man.
We have Spa Man.
Have no fear.
Spa Man works next door to us and is in the spa business, as you might expect. And what is the name of his company? It's a really long name.
Natural Eco Solutions.
Natural Eco Solutions. There we go. Thank you.
Here
for
in
that.
Anacortes, Washington.
Sorry,
And then I
Dave.
do see somebody mentioned Auren. I did a quick search on that. I'm going to be checking that program out. That does
Well,
look
I
very
have
good.
used our clone. Our clone is primarily for the hardcore Linux people, so that definitely tells me where they're coming from, and you can use our clone from a command line to get your data to some of the cloud environments like Backblaze and that sort of thing. I would like to recommend that you who are using our clone also take a look at a program called Copia, K-O-P-I-A,
Oh yeah, I remember.
as a wonderful Linux backup solution that will get your backup data to Backblaze or any AWS or any of the other off-site solutions, and has a very user-friendly web interface as well as a desktop interface. But it's a little bit geekier for the average consumer, so I'm tempted to send everybody to go see Copia or Copia, whichever it is, K-O-P-I-A, but I want to create a video on usability before I start sending anybody there. RoboCopy?
RoboCopy, I haven't heard of.
I've heard of, yeah, RoboCopy,
Yeah.
common program. A lot of people use it for whatever the hell they use it for. I don't actually use it. I think it's for filling forms in. Has been, no, they have a Robo Forms. That's the one I've used or seen used in the past, where it remembers all the form data and fills it in over
Okay.
time. I think that's kind of gone by the wayside.
I thought it was like a command line thing through Windows for RoboCopy, but
It might
it's
be.
been a while since I've looked at that. But I know that it's very reliable.
All
if
right.
you're able
There's
to-
tons of software out there, as you
Lots
can
on
see.
it.
FTW, a recommendation from a customer for backup
FTW means
solution.
for the
Yeah.
win.
For the win. All right, there you go. Thank you. Sometimes old school doesn't get these little acronyms.
Yeah,
All right,
top
but
command line.
We are open today
Okay.
from 11 to 5, and on that note, I think I should probably go get the door.
Yeah, we're late. We've got a bricks and
We're a little
for those that
15
don't know,
minutes.
we have a real bricks and mortar retail store here in Anacortes, Washington. We've been here for 20 years, and we are 15 minutes overdue. We put a sign on the door saying we're we're doing what we're doing.
We
but
can solve problems remotely from anywhere in the world as long as you have an internet connection. If you are here in our backyard, Mount Vernon, Burlington, Oak Harbor, Anacortes, then feel free to stop by. We'll be here to help you out.
Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.
Take care.